The bank notice fluttered in Samuel Harrison's weathered hands as he stood at the edge of his withering cornfield. Final warning was stamped in bold red letters across the top. 3 generations of farming legacy about to be erased by one signature on foreclosure papers. He folded the paper and tucked it into his pocket, his calloused fingers trembling slightly. Just then, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up alongside his property, dust billowing around its polished exterior. The window rolled down to reveal a woman with sharp eyes that seemed to calculate everything they saw. She asked for directions, and Samuel gave them with the kindness that defined him, despite the weight on his shoulders. Little did he know those directions would lead her right back to him, with an offer that would change everything. But could a man who had spent his whole life with his hands in the soil possibly trust someone from a world of glass skyscrapers and billion-dollar deals? Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Tomorrow's story might just inspire you to change someone's life with a single act of kindness. Samuel Harrison wiped sweat from his brow with a faded bandana as the midday sun beat down mercilessly on Whispering Pines Farm. The once vibrant fields now showed patches of brown, withering under the combination of drought and neglect that came from not being able to afford proper irrigation systems. At 52, Samuel's face was a tapestry of lines that told stories of harsh winters, scorching summers, and years of worry that had intensified over the past decade. The farm had been in the Harrison family for 3 generations. Samuel's grandfather had purchased the land after returning from World War II, transforming rocky soil into fertile ground through sheer determination. His father had expanded it, adding dairy production to their crop rotation. But under Samuel's stewardship, external forces beyond his control, changing markets, rising costs, corporate farming competition, and now climate change had pushed Whispering Pines to the brink of financial ruin. Samuel pulled the bank notice from his pocket again, reading the words he'd already memorized. Final foreclosure proceedings will commence in 30 days unless payment arrangements are made. The sum required was far beyond anything he could gather. His shoulders slumped as he folded the paper carefully and returned it to his pocket. "Dad, I found those parts for the tractor," called a voice from behind him. Samuel turned to see his daughter Lily approaching, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, dirt smudged across her college sweatshirt. At 24, she had recently graduated with a degree in agricultural science, returning home instead of pursuing more lucrative opportunities to help save the family farm. "They're used, but they'll work," Lily continued, setting down a box of metal components. "Got them for half what Johnston was asking. Told him we'd help with his harvest next month instead." Samuel nodded, trying to hide his concern. They couldn't afford new parts, but bartering their already stretched labor wasn't sustainable either. "That's good thinking, sweetheart." Lily studied her father's expression. "You got another notice, didn't you?" Samuel hesitated, then nodded. There was no point hiding it from her. Lily had inherited his practicality, along with her mother's sharp intelligence. 30 days. Lily's face fell momentarily before she squared her shoulders. "Then we have 30 days to figure something out. Have you called about that agricultural relief program? They're backed up with applications. Said it could be months before they even review ours." Samuel gestured toward the western fields. "I'm thinking we should sell the back 40. Might buy us some time." "Dad, no. Once we start parceling off the land, there's no going back. The farm needs to be whole to be viable." Lily's voice took on the same stubborn tone that had characterized her mother, Sarah, who had passed away 5 years earlier from cancer. The medical bills had been the first major blow to their financial stability. "Sometimes, we have to make hard choices to survive, Lily." Samuel gazed across the rolling hills that had been Harrison land for decades. "Your grandfather would understand. Grandpa fought to keep every acre, even during the drought of 72. He used to say that the land remembers who loves it," Samuel finished. It was a family saying, one that had guided generations of Harrisons through difficult times. "I know, sweetheart, but love doesn't pay property taxes or repair equipment." A cloud of dust on the distant road caught their attention. A sleek black Mercedes was making its way down the rarely traveled county road that passed their property, looking distinctly out of place among the pickup trucks and tractors that usually traverse these parts. Who on earth is that? Lily wondered aloud. Nobody drives something that fancy around here. Samuel shrugged. Probably some city folk who took a wrong turn off the highway. As if confirming his theory, the Mercedes slowed and then turned onto the gravel path that led to the Harrison farmhouse. Samuel and Lily exchanged curious glances before walking toward the driveway to meet the unexpected visitor. The car came to a stop, dust settling around its gleaming exterior. The driver's window rolled down smoothly, revealing a woman perhaps in her mid-40s, with sleek dark hair cut in a sharp bob and intelligent eyes behind designer sunglasses. She removed them, revealing features that were striking rather than conventionally beautiful high cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes that seemed to assess everything with rapid precision. "Excuse me," she called out in a clear, confident voice that carried the crispness of urban efficiency. "I seem to be a bit turned around. I'm looking for Crescent Valley Road." Samuel approached the car, automatically wiping his hands on his jeans, though there was little he could do about the ingrained soil that had become a permanent feature of his skin. "You're quite a ways off. Crescent Valley is about 15 miles east of here." The woman sighed. "That's what I was afraid of. My GPS directed me this way, but the signal dropped about 10 minutes ago." "That happens out here," Samuel said with a small smile. "Cell towers are as sparse as rain these days. Could you give me directions back to the main highway? I have a meeting in Cedar Ridge I can't be late for." Samuel nodded. "You'll want to turn around and head back the way you came for about 3 miles until you hit a fork in the road. Take the right turn. Fork and follow it for another 4 miles. That'll put you on Highway 23. Cedar Ridge is about 20 minutes north from there." End quote. The woman was typing the directions into her phone. "That's very helpful, thank you." She glanced up, her gaze taking in Samuel, Lily, and then sweeping across the farm beyond them. Something in her expression shifted subtly. "This is your land?" "Yes, ma'am. Whispering Pines Farm. Been in the family for 3 generations. Beautiful property," she commented, her eyes lingering on the rolling hills that stretched to the distant tree line. Unusual to see such varied topography on a single farm. Samuel couldn't help but feel a surge of pride, despite the property's current struggles. "My grandfather had an eye for good land. Said the hills and valleys created their own microclimates, helpful for diverse crops." "Smart man," the woman remarked. She extended her hand through the window. "I'm Alexandra Reeves, by the way." "Samuel Harrison," he replied, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm and brief. "This is my daughter Lily." Lily offered a polite nod, but remained slightly back, regarding the stranger with cautious curiosity. "Thank you for the directions, Mr. Harrison," Alexandra said, her hand already moving to the gear shift. "I appreciate your help." "Safe travels, Ms. Reeves," Samuel responded, stepping back from the car. As Alexandra prepared to drive away, she paused, looking once more at the farmhouse and the fields beyond. "Is there a place to get decent coffee in Cedar Ridge? I missed my morning cup dealing with this detour." "Marlene's Diner on Main Street," Lily spoke up. "Best coffee in the county. Their blueberry pie isn't bad either." Alexandra smiled, the expression warming her otherwise businesslike demeanor. "Thank you. I'll remember that." With a final nod, she rolled up her window and reversed, turning her car around in a smooth, practiced motion before heading back down the road, leaving a trail of dust in her wake. Samuel and Lily watched until the Mercedes disappeared from view. "You think she'll make her meeting?" Lily asked. "If she drives that thing as fast as it looks like it can go," Samuel replied. He turned back toward the fields, the brief interruption already fading as reality reasserted itself. "Come on, let's get that tractor fixed while we still have daylight." As they walked back toward the equipment shed, Louis cast a final glance at the road. "Wonder what someone like that is doing all the way out here in farm country." Samuel shrugged. "Business in Cedar Ridge," she said. "Probably something to do with those new developments they're putting in." She seemed interested in the farm. "Just being polite, I expect," Samuel said, already refocusing on the day's endless tasks. Folks like that don't have much reason to care about places like ours. Alexandra Reeves tapped her manicured fingers against the steering wheel as she followed Samuel Harrison's directions. Her meeting in Cedar Ridge wasn't for another 3 hours. She had built an extra time for exactly this kind of situation. But she disliked being disoriented in unfamiliar territory. Control and preparation were the cornerstones of her success. At 47, Alexandra had built Reeves Realty Group from a small startup into one of the most successful real estate development companies on the East Coast. What had begun as a one-woman operation buying and flipping properties in Philadelphia had expanded into a corporation with offices in 6 states and a portfolio worth billions. Her latest venture, which brought her to this rural part of the state, involved identifying overlooked areas with development potential. Cedar Ridge had caught her attention with its combination of natural beauty, proximity to 3 major cities within a 2-hour drive, and property values that were significantly below market potential. The meeting today was with the mayor and several council members to discuss possible tax incentives for a planned community she wanted to build, a mix of upscale homes and carefully curated commercial spaces designed to attract wealthy urbanites looking for weekend retreats and early retirees seeking a quieter lifestyle without sacrificing amenities. But the unexpected detour had shown her something potentially more interesting. Whispering Pines Farm had prime land, much better situated than the parcels she'd been considering closer to Cedar Ridge. The very topography the farmer had mentioned would allow for spectacular views from multiple building sites. The pristine state of most of the acreage would appeal to eco-conscious buyers willing to pay premium prices. And most telling of all, Alexandra had recognized the signs of financial distress immediately: the equipment that needed repairs, the fields requiring investment, the subtle slump in Samuel Harrison's shoulders despite, quote, his obvious pride. Alexandra had built her business on recognizing opportunity. And she sensed a significant one here. She reached the highway and turned north toward Cedar Ridge, her mind already calculating possibilities. The trick would be determining exactly how desperate the Harrisons were, what the property was worth, and how to approach an offer that would benefit her company while appearing generous to the sellers. It was a delicate balance she had perfected over the years. Following Lily Harrison's recommendation, Alexandra stopped at Marlene's Diner in Cedar Ridge. The place was a perfectly preserved slice of Americana red vinyl booths, chrome accents, and the aroma of coffee and comfort food. She took a seat at the counter, ordered coffee, and on impulse, a slice of the recommended blueberry pie. "You're not from around here," observed the waitress, a woman in her 60s with a name tag reading Marlene pinned to her uniform. "Just visiting," Alexandra replied with a practiced smile. "Business in town. What kind of business brings you to our little quarter of nowhere?" Marlene asked as she poured coffee into a heavy ceramic mug. Alexandra had learned long ago that small towns operated on information exchange. Sometimes it was worth participating. "Real estate development. I see potential in Cedar Ridge." Marlene's expression turned guarded. "We've had developers through before. Most want to turn us into something we're not. The successful ones enhance what's already special about a place." Alexandra responded smoothly. "Cedar Ridge has unique charm. The trick is preserving that while bringing in new economic opportunities." Marlene seemed to consider this as she set down a generous slice of pie. "Well, we could use the jobs, that's for certain. Too many young folks leaving because there's no work beyond the farms and small businesses. And the farms aren't doing so well themselves lately." Alexandra seized the opening. "I noticed that. Passed a beautiful property on my way here, Whispering Pines Farm, I think the owner called it." "The Harrison place." Marlene nodded, her expression softening. "Good people. Samuel's had a rough go of it since Sarah passed, trying to keep that farm afloat by himself, though his daughter's back home helping now. It looked like a lovely property. Been in their family long? 3 generations. Samuel's grandfather Warren started it after the war. Their boy Nathaniel was supposed to be the 4th generation, but he joined the Marines instead. Can't blame him. Way farming's going these days." Alexandra sipped her coffee, which was indeed excellent. "It's a challenging industry. Corporate farming has changed the landscape for family operations." "That it has," Marlene agreed. "Samuel's too proud to say it, but word is, the bank's closing in." Would be ashamed to see that land go to some factory farm operation. Harrison land has always been farmed right, no cutting corners with chemicals, and such. Sometimes change is inevitable, Alexandra commented neutrally. The question becomes, what kind of change? Marlene gave her a shrewd look. I suppose that's where folks like you come in, deciding what becomes of places like this. Alexandra smiled. In a way, though ultimately, it's always the owner's decision. Assuming they have real choices, Marlene replied, moving down the counter to refill another customer's coffee. Alexandra ate her pie thoughtfully. Marlene was right. When financial pressure became severe enough, choices narrowed considerably. That was the reality of the market. But Alexandra hadn't built her reputation by being predatory. She preferred situations where all parties could walk away feeling satisfied, even if her company inevitably got the better end of the deal. By the time she finished her coffee, Alexandra had made a decision. After her meeting with the Cedar Ridge officials, she would do some research on Whispering Pines Farm, property records, tax assessments, market valuations, all the data she needed to formulate an approach. Timing would be crucial. Too eager, and Samuel Harrison might become suspicious or raise his expectations. Too hesitant, and the bank might beat her to the punch. Alexandra paid her bill, leaving a generous tip that would be remembered. In small communities, such gestures mattered. As she drove to her meeting, she was already composing the framework of a proposal in her mind, one that might solve both the Harrisons' problems and her company's ongoing search for prime development land. 3 days later, Samuel was repairing a section of fencing when he spotted the now familiar black Mercedes coming up the road. He straightened, wincing slightly as his back protested after hours of bending and hammering. Lily was in town picking up supplies, leaving him to deal with their unexpected visitor alone. Alexandra Reeves pulled up and stepped out of her car, looking incongruous against the rural backdrop in her tailored pantsuit and silk blouse. Yet something about her bearing suggested she was someone who adapted easily to any environment. "Mr. Harrison," she called as she approached. "I hope you don't mind my returning. I wanted to thank you properly for your help the other day." Samuel nodded politely, though confusion was evident on his face. "No thanks necessary, Ms. Reeves. Just being neighborly." "Nevertheless," she replied, reaching into her car to retrieve a small gift basket. "I brought you some specialties from Marlene's. The pie was exceptional, as your daughter promised." Samuel accepted the basket awkwardly, noting it contained coffee, preserves, and what appeared to be a whole pie. "That's mighty kind, but really not necessary. Consider it a small gesture of appreciation." Alexandra glanced around, her gaze seeming to catalog every detail of the farm. "Your property truly is remarkable, Mr. Harrison. I didn't fully appreciate it when I first drove through." Something in her tone put Samuel slightly on edge. "Been in the family a long time." "So I heard," Alexandra replied. When Samuel raised an eyebrow, she explained, "Marlene is quite the conversationalist. She speaks very highly of you and your family." Samuel set the basket down on a fence post. "What brings you back this way, Ms. Reeves?" "Cedar Ridge is in the opposite direction, if you recall." Alexandra smiled, appreciating his directness. "Actually, I came specifically to see you. I'm a real estate developer, Mr. Harrison. My company specializes in creating thoughtfully designed communities that work with the natural landscape rather than against it." Samuel's expression closed slightly. "Not interested in selling, if that's why you're here." "I understand completely," Alexandra replied smoothly. "Family land has significance beyond monetary value. But I'm not actually here with a purchase offer, at least, not in the traditional sense." Despite himself, Samuel was curious. "What other sense is there?" "A partnership," Alexandra said. "My initial research suggests that Whispering Pines has significant untapped potential. I'd like to explore ways we might work together that could benefit us both." Samuel crossed his arms. "Not looking for investors either. We manage our own affairs." Alexandra nodded, seeming unfazed by his resistance. "Of course, independence is valuable, but sometimes strategic collaboration can preserve what matters most." She paused, then continued with calculated precision. Like keeping the land in the Harrison family for a fourth generation. Samuel's jaw tightened. She'd clearly done her homework, including learning about his financial situation. Ms. Reeves, I appreciate your interest, but please, call me Alexandra, she interrupted gently. And I'm not asking for an answer today. I'm simply proposing a conversation about possibilities. May I show you something? After a moment's hesitation, Samuel nodded reluctantly. Alexandra retrieved a tablet from her car and pulled up a series of images. These are from a project we completed in Vermont. The landowner was in a similar position, a historic family farm facing modern economic pressures. She showed Samuel photographs of rolling farmland that had been partially developed with architecturally stunning homes that somehow complemented rather than detracted from the landscape. What caught his attention, however, were the images of the remaining agricultural areas, which appeared more vibrant and productive than before. The Alderson family retained ownership of 60% of their original acreage, Alexandra explained. The revenue from our development of the remainder allowed them to completely modernize their farming operation. They now run one of the most successful organic dairy operations in New England, while our homeowners enjoy the beauty of a working agricultural landscape as part of their community. End quote. Samuel studied the images with a farmer's critical eye. Looks pretty in pictures. Reality is usually messier. I can arrange for you to speak directly with Frank Alderson if you'd like, Alexandra offered. He was as skeptical as you initially. Now he'll tell you it saved his family's legacy. Samuel handed the tablet back. Ms. Reeves, Alexandra, I appreciate you coming all the way out here, but this isn't something I'd consider without consulting my family. My daughter and son would both have a say in any decision this significant. I would expect nothing less, Alexandra replied. Family farms are exactly that, family decisions. All I'm asking is that you think about it. Let me leave you my card, and if you're interested in continuing the conversation, you can reach me any time. She handed him a business card with her contact information embossed in elegant lettering. Samuel took it reluctantly, tucking it into his shirt pocket. I should let you get back to your work, Alexandra said. Thank you for hearing me out, Mr. Harrison. Samuel, he corrected, feeling that keeping to formalities after she'd offered her first name would be rude. Alexandra smiled, a genuine expression that momentarily softened her businesslike demeanor. Samuel then. Enjoy the pie. Marlene says it's blueberry today. As she drove away, Samuel picked up the gift basket, absently noting the quality of its contents. His mind was already churning with conflicting thoughts. The bank's deadline loomed just weeks away, and here was a potential solution appearing out of nowhere. But was it a lifeline or a trap? His father had always warned against city folks bearing gifts when it came to their land. He returned to the fence repair, working with mechanical precision while his thoughts remained in turmoil. By the time Lily returned from town, he had made one decision. He would tell her about Alexandra's visit, but he would think carefully before mentioning it to his son Nathaniel. Nathan had strong opinions about keeping the farm intact, even though he had chosen to leave. Some decisions required careful consideration before bringing the full family into the discussion. And despite his initial resistance, Samuel couldn't deny that Alexandra Reeves had offered something he was dangerously short on: options. Lily's reaction was exactly what Samuel had anticipated. Absolutely not, she declared, pacing the worn floorboards of their farmhouse kitchen after hearing about Alexandra's visit. Dad, these developers are all the same. They come in with pretty pictures and promises. The next thing you know, we're watching bulldozers tear up land that's been in our family for generations. Samuel sighed, rubbing his temple where a headache was forming. I didn't agree to anything, Lily. Just listen to what she had to say. Even entertaining the idea is dangerous, Lily insisted. She stopped pacing and leaned against the counter, her expression softening slightly. I know things are tough right now, but there have to be other options. Such as? Samuel asked quietly. The agricultural relief program is backed up for months. The bank won't extend our deadline. The crops won't bring in enough this season, even if we had a miracle rainfall tomorrow. What exactly do you suggest we do? Lily looked away, unable to provide an immediate answer. The harsh reality of their situation hung in the air between them. Have you told Nathan? she finally asked. Samuel shook his head. Not yet. Thought we should discuss it first, you and me. He's got enough on his plate with his deployment ending and transition coming up. Nathaniel Harrison, Samuel's only son and Lily's older brother by 2 years, was completing his final tour with the Marines. He had joined 8 years ago, partly out of patriotism and partly because he had seen the writing on the wall for small family farms. His decision had created tension with Samuel, who had always assumed his son would eventually take over the farm. He needs to know, Lily said firmly. This affects his inheritance too. What inheritance, Lily? Samuel's voice rose slightly with frustration. If we lose the farm to foreclosure, there won't be anything to inherit except debt and regrets. The bluntness of his statement hung in the air. Lily blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. I'm sorry, Samuel said more gently. I don't want to be harsh, but we need to be realistic. Nathan chose his path. You came back to help, and I'm grateful beyond words for that, but I can't expect either of you to sacrifice your futures for land. That may not be viable anymore. Lily crossed the kitchen and placed a hand on her father's shoulder. This farm isn't just land, Dad. It's who we are. It's the place Mom loved. It's where we scattered her ashes, by the willow tree where you proposed to her. How can we even think about letting strangers build houses there? Samuel covered her hand with his own. Your mother would have said the same thing you're saying now, but she also would have wanted us to survive, to adapt. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Alexandra mentioned something called a conservation development. Part of the land would remain agricultural, protected from future development. We'd retain ownership of that portion, and sell the rest to become another cookie-cutter subdivision? Lily's tone was skeptical. I don't know all the details yet, Samuel admitted. But what if it meant we could keep farming the best parts of our land, with modern equipment, and without the weight of debt hanging over us? What if Nathan could still come home to something, if he ever changes his mind? What if you could implement some of those sustainable farming techniques you studied in college, instead of us just scraping by year after year? Lily was quiet for a long moment, considering her father's words. You really think this developer would allow that? They're not exactly known for their generosity. I don't know, Samuel said honestly. But Alexandra Reeves didn't strike me as typical. She talked about partnership, not just purchase. Said she could put us in touch with another family who did something similar. It could be a sales tactic, Lily pointed out. Could be, Samuel agreed. But does it hurt to listen? To explore the possibility? The bank's deadline isn't moving, Lily. We're running out of time and options. Lily sighed deeply. I still think we should talk to Nathan before pursuing this any further. I'll call him tomorrow, Samuel promised. But try to keep an open mind, sweetheart. Change isn't always loss. Sometimes it's survival. Lily nodded reluctantly. I'll try, Dad. But I want to be involved in any further discussions with Ms. Reeves. I have questions she needs to answer. Wouldn't have it any other way, Samuel assured her, feeling a surge of pride in his daughter's protective instincts and sharp mind. If they did end up dealing with Alexandra Reeves, Lily would ensure they weren't taken advantage of. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Samuel sat on the porch swing that had been his thinking spot for decades. The night air carried the scent of earth and growing things, overlaid with a hint of rain that probably wouldn't materialize. The farm stretched before him, silvered by moonlight, beautiful despite its struggles. He pulled Alexander's business card from his pocket, turning it over in his fingers thoughtfully. The sensible course would be to wait until after speaking with Nathan tomorrow. But Samuel had a nagging fear that delay only reduced their already limited options. Making a decision, he pulled out his cell phone and dialed the number on the card. Alexandra answered on the third ring, her voice alert despite the late hour. Alexandra Reeves speaking. Ms. Reeves, this is Samuel Harrison. Hope I'm not calling too late. Not at all, Samuel. I'm glad to hear from you. Her tone conveyed genuine pleasure rather than mere professional courtesy. I've been thinking about your visit today, Samuel began, choosing his words with care. My daughter Lily and I discussed it. She has reservations, as you might expect. My son Nathan doesn't know yet he's finishing a military deployment. Family farms involve family decisions, Alexandra acknowledged. I respect that completely. Samuel took a deep breath. We'd like to learn more. No commitments, just information. If you're willing to share details about how this partnership might work, we're willing to listen. I appreciate your openness, Alexandra replied. How about this? I can come by the day after tomorrow with some preliminary concepts tailored specifically for Whispering Pines. Would that work for you and Lily? That would be fine, Samuel agreed. Mid-morning would be best. Farm days start early. I remember, Alexandra said with a hint of warmth in her voice. My grandparents had a small orchard in upstate New York. Not quite the same scale as your operation, but I recall those dawn wake-up calls. The personal detail surprised Samuel. Somehow, he hadn't imagined Alexandra Reeves with rural roots. Apples? He asked. And pears. Nothing fancy, just enough to sell at local markets. My first job was sorting fruit in the barn each autumn. Samuel found himself smiling slightly. Mine was collecting eggs. Couldn't have been more than 5 when my grandfather decided I was old enough for the responsibility. Those early lessons stay with us, Alexandra observed. I'll see you day after tomorrow then. Around 10? We'll be here, Samuel confirmed. As he ended the call, he wasn't sure if he felt relief or apprehension. Perhaps both. But for the first time in months, he also felt something that had been notably absent from his life. Possibility. Alexandra arrived precisely at 10 o'clock 2 days later, dressed more casually than on her previous visits in slacks and a simple blouse, though her footwear still wasn't suited for farm terrain. She carried a leather portfolio and greeted Samuel and Lily with professional warmth. They settled around the kitchen table, where generations of Harrisons had made farming decisions. The space was worn but immaculately clean, with touches of Sarah Harrison's decorating still evident in the curtains and the collection of blue willow plates displayed on an open shelf. Thank you both for agreeing to this meeting, Alexandra began, opening her portfolio. I want to emphasize that everything we discussed today is exploratory. My goal is to show you possibilities, not pressure you toward any particular decision. Lily sat with arms crossed, her expression guarded but attentive. You mentioned a partnership model. What exactly does that mean in practical terms? Alexandra nodded appreciatively at the direct question. In traditional development scenarios, a company like mine would simply purchase the land outright and proceed with our plans. The former owners would have no further involvement or benefit beyond the initial sale. She spread out several documents on the table. What I'm proposing is different. Reeves Realty Group would form a limited liability company with the Harrison family as partners. You would contribute a portion of your land, not all of it as your investment in the venture. We would contribute capital, development expertise, and marketing resources. Samuel leaned forward slightly. What portion of the land are we talking about? Based on my preliminary analysis, I believe we could create an exceptional development using approximately 60% of your current acreage, primarily the bow, eastern, and southern sections. Alexandra indicated areas on a satellite map of the property. The most productive agricultural land would remain under your direct control and operation. Lily frowned. Those eastern acres include some of our best soil. True, Alexandra acknowledged. But they also offer the topography and views that would allow us to command premium prices for home sites. Higher revenue means more resources flowing back to the agricultural operation. She turned to another document. Here's the financial structure I envision. The Harrison family would retain 100% ownership of the remaining 40% of the original property. Additionally, you would hold a 25% stake in the development company. That means you would receive a quarter of all profits from lot sales and ongoing community fees. End quote. Samuel's eyebrows rose. That's more generous than I expected. It's not generosity, Alexandra clarified. It's good business. Your family's long-standing connection to this land adds authenticity and value to the development. Buyers increasingly want a Dow. Connection to place and history. The Harrison family continuing to farm adjacent land creates exactly the kind of story and experience our target market desires. Lily's expression remained skeptical. So we become a quaint backdrop for wealthy weekenders? Alexandra met her gaze directly. You become partners in a sustainable model that allows agricultural tradition to continue alongside thoughtful development. The alternative, as I understand it, is potential foreclosure and corporate acquisition of the entire property. The blunt assessment hung in the air. Samuel broke the tension. You mentioned the Vermont project had agricultural components. How would that work here? Alexandra seemed pleased by the question. The development would include community gardens, walking trails connecting to the working farm areas, and a small market where you could sell produce directly to residents. We would also establish covenants that protect agricultural views and operations, meaning future homeowners couldn't complain about typical farming activities. She turned to another page. But most significantly, the capital generated would allow you to transition the remaining farmland to higher value, sustainable production, based on soil analysis and market research. I believe specialized organic crops, potentially combined with agritourism components, would be ideal for this property. Lily uncrossed her arms, her interest visibly piqued, despite her reservations. What kinds of crops are you thinking? Specialty produce for farm-to-table restaurants in the surrounding cities, heritage varieties that command premium prices, possibly a small vineyard on the western slopes. Alexandra pointed to specific areas on the map. With modern irrigation systems, organic certification, and direct marketing channels, the per-acre revenue could increase tenfold over conventional commodity crops. Samuel exchanged glances with Lily. They had discussed similar transitions for years but lacked the capital to implement them. This all sounds impressive on paper, Samuel said carefully. But farming isn't just about maximizing profit. There are practical considerations: water rights, access routes, buffer zones between operations. Alexandra nodded. All crucial details that would be addressed in the formal agreement. We would ensure your agricultural operations have priority access to essential resources. She pulled out another document. I've drafted a preliminary water management plan that actually improves your current situation through captured runoff and strategic retention ponds. For the next hour, they discussed specifics, projected timelines, financial modeling, infrastructure requirements, and legal protections. Alexandra answered each question thoroughly, acknowledging concerns and suggesting solutions. Throughout the conversation, Samuel noticed she consistently referred to your farm and your operations, reinforcing that the Harrisons would maintain control over the agricultural aspects. Finally, Alexandra gathered her materials. I've given you a lot to consider. I suggest you take time to discuss this as a family, including your son. If you're interested in proceeding to the next stage, we would conduct more detailed site assessments and financial analyses, still with no binding commitment. Lily, who had become increasingly engaged in the discussion despite her initial resistance, asked, "And what about the bank deadline? That's only weeks away." Alexandra closed her portfolio. If you decide to move forward with a partnership exploration, Reeves Realty Group would be willing to provide a bridge loan to address your immediate bank obligations. This would be structured as an advance against future development proceeds, not additional debt for your farm to carry. Samuel sat back, surprised by the offer. That's substantial. It's practical, Alexandra replied. For this partnership to succeed, we need to ensure financial stability from the beginning. Constant pressure from creditors doesn't allow for thoughtful planning. Lily looked at her father, then back to Alexandra. And if we explore this partnership but ultimately decide against it? The loan would convert to traditional financing with favorable terms, or you could repay it through other means, Alexandra answered. I'm not looking to trap you, just to create space for proper consideration of a complex decision. As Alexandra prepared to leave, she handed Samuel a folder. These are contact details for Frank Alderson in Vermont, and 2 other families who entered similar partnerships with us. I encourage you to speak with them directly, without me present. They can give you an unfiltered perspective on working with my company. After Alexandra's departure, Samuel and Lily sat in silence for several minutes, processing everything they had heard. She's very convincing, Lily finally said. Samuel nodded. She is. But the numbers make sense, and her approach seems genuine. I still have concerns, Lily admitted. But it's more promising than I expected. She stood up, reaching for her laptop. I'm going to research these other projects she mentioned, see if reality matches her presentation. Good idea, Samuel agreed. I need to call Nathan tonight. This affects his future too, even if he's made different choices. Later that evening, Samuel sat in the same porch swing where he had first called Alexandra, now preparing for a very different conversation. The video call connected, showing his son's face on the small screen. Though only 26, Nathan Harrison's expression carried the maturity that military service often accelerates. His dark hair was still regulation short, his jawline set in ways that reminded Samuel painfully of his late wife. Hey, Dad, Nathan greeted him, the background showing a barrack-style room. Everything okay? You don't usually call midweek. Samuel took a deep breath. Things are complicated, son. We need to talk about the farm. Nathan's expression immediately tensed. The bank again? Partly, Samuel acknowledged. But there's a new development, literal development, as it happens. A real estate investor has approached us with a partnership proposal. I need to fill you in, because this affects you too. For the next 20 minutes, Samuel explained Alexandra's visit and proposal, trying to present the information as neutrally as possible, despite his growing inclination toward considering it seriously. Nathan listened mostly in silence, his expression progressively darkening. So you're thinking of selling out? Nathan finally said, his tone flat. Samuel winced at the characterization. That's not how I see it, Nathan. We're exploring a way to save what matters most about this place. By carving it up for rich city people's vacation homes? The bitterness in Nathan's voice was palpable. Grandpa and great-grandpa would be heartbroken. They might be more heartbroken watching the whole thing get seized by the bank and turned into a corporate soybean operation, Samuel countered, trying to keep frustration from his voice. We're out of options, son. There are always options, Nathan insisted. What about government programs? Agricultural grants? We've applied for everything available. Rejection letters are starting to outnumber the bills. Samuel sighed heavily. Nathan, I understand your attachment to the land. I feel it too. But this could be a way to preserve something, rather than lose everything. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. My deployment ends in 3 weeks. I'll be home a week after that. Can you hold off on any decisions until then? The bank deadline is tight, Samuel warned. But yes, we can wait that long. I want you to meet Alexandra, hear the proposal firsthand. I'd rather meet with our banker. See if there's anything we haven't tried. Nathan's jaw was set stubbornly. Samuel felt a flare of irritation. I've spent 2 years working with that bank, Nathan. If there were easy solutions, don't you think I'd have found them by now? Maybe they'll respond differently to a veteran, Nathan suggested. There are special programs which require capital we don't have, Samuel interrupted. Son, I need you to come home with an open mind. Not already convinced you know better than those of us who've been here dealing with this day in and day out. The hurt that flashed across Nathan's face made Samuel immediately regret his sharpness. I didn't mean, he began. No, you're right, Nathan cut in, his voice carefully controlled. I haven't been there. I made different choices. He paused. But that doesn't mean I don't care about what happens to our land. I know that, Samuel said more gently. Just come home, talk to Alexandra, look at the numbers. Then we'll make a decision as a family. Nathan nodded stiffly. I need to go, Dad. Squad meeting in 5. I'll see you soon. The screen went dark before Samuel could respond. He sat back, rubbing his eyes tiredly. The conversation had gone about as well as he'd expected, which wasn't very well at all. Nathan had always been the most brat, traditional of his children, the most attached to the Harrison legacy despite choosing a different path for himself. The screen of his phone lit up with a text message from Lily. Found reviews from residents in her Vermont development. Overwhelmingly positive. The Alderson farm is winning agricultural sustainability awards. Samuel smiled slightly. Lily, always the researcher, was doing her due diligence. Her initial skepticism was giving way to cautious investigation, a good sign. Now if only Nathan would approach the situation with similar openness. He texted back, good to know. Nathan coming home in about 4 weeks. Wants to be part of decision. Louis's response came quickly. Of course. How did he take it? Samuel stared at the question, considering how to frame his son's reaction fairly. Finally he typed, concerned. Protective of the land. Will need time to process. An understatement. But pushing the issue with either of his children wouldn't help. Time and information were what they all needed now. And perhaps most critically, the breathing room that Alexandra's bridge loan could provide. The following week brought changes to Whispering Pines Farm. With Samuel's reluctant permission, Alexandra had arranged for a team of agricultural and development experts to conduct preliminary assessments of the property. They moved discreetly, respectful of ongoing farm operations. But their presence was a tangible reminder that transformation loomed on the horizon. Lily had thrown herself into research, dividing her time between farm work and intensive study of sustainable agricultural models that might be implemented if they proceeded with Alexandra's proposal. She had even initiated several conversations with Frank Alderson in Vermont, whose enthusiasm for his partnership with Reeves Realty Group seemed genuine and unscripted. Samuel focused on managing day-to-day operations while wrestling with the emotional weight of the potential change. Each morning, he walked the eastern fields that might soon hold carefully designed homes instead of crops, trying to make peace with the possibility. He found himself remembering his grandfather's words from decades ago. Land isn't just dirt, Sammy. It's possibility. Always look for what it wants to become. Had the old man somehow foreseen that the land's future might diverge from pure agriculture? Or was Samuel merely seeking justification for what increasingly felt like an inevitable decision? On Friday afternoon, Samuel was repairing an irrigation pump when Alexandra's Mercedes appeared on the access road. This was unexpected. Their next meeting wasn't scheduled until the following week. He wiped his hands on a rag and walked to meet her as she parked. Alexandra. He greeted her with a nod. Didn't expect to see you today? She stepped out of the car, dressed more practically than on previous visits in slacks and low-heeled boots that could handle the farm terrain. I apologize for arriving unannounced. Something's come up that I thought you should know about immediately. Samuel felt a flicker of concern. Problem with the assessment? No, the assessments are proceeding well, Alexandra assured him. This is about Cedar Ridge Capital. The bank? Samuel's concern deepened. Alexandra nodded. May we sit somewhere and talk? Samuel led her to a shaded area near the equipment barn, where a weathered picnic table served as an outdoor break space during busy seasons. They sat across from each other, the warm afternoon breeze carrying the scent of, sun-warmed earth. I was in a meeting with the Cedar Ridge Town Council yesterday, Alexandra began. The economic development director mentioned that Cedar Ridge Capital has been packaging their distressed agricultural loans for sale to investment groups. Samuel frowned. What does that mean exactly? It means the bank is likely selling your mortgage along with others to a company that specializes in acquiring troubled assets, Alexandra explained. These companies typically move very aggressively, often accelerating foreclosure timelines to maximize their returns. They can change our deadline? Samuel asked, alarm evident in his voice. Potentially. If the sale goes through, the new holder could call the loan due immediately under certain covenant provisions. Alexandra's expression was sympathetic but direct. I have a contact at Cedar Ridge Capital who confirmed your loan is in the package being sold. The transaction could close as early as next week. Samuel felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. So instead of 30 days, we could have what, a week? Days? It's hard to predict exactly, Alexandra said. But yes, the timeline could compress significantly. These companies don't have community relationships to maintain, so they operate purely by numbers. Samuel stared across his fields, processing this new threat. Why are you telling me this? It only makes your offer more appealing if we're under greater pressure. Alexandra met his gaze directly. Because I want our potential partnership to be built on trust, not desperation. You deserve to have all the facts so your family can make a fully informed decision. Samuel studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, but finding only what appeared to be genuine concern. I appreciate the information, he finally said. but it doesn't change our plan to wait for my son's return before making any decisions." "I understand completely," Alexandra replied. "Family comes first. But given this new development, I would like to modify my previous offer." She opened her portfolio and slid a document across the table. "This is a letter of intent for the bridge loan we discussed. It would allow you to pay off Cedar Ridge Capital immediately, removing the threat of accelerated foreclosure." Samuel glanced at the document without touching it. "What's the catch?" "No catch," Alexandra said. "The loan terms are exactly as I described before. The only difference is timing. By securing this now, you create space for your family to make decisions without a sword hanging over your heads. And if we ultimately decide against the partnership, the loan converts to conventional financing as discussed, or you're free to refinance with another institution." Alexandra pointed to a section of the document. "This paragraph explicitly states that accepting this bridge financing creates no obligation to proceed with any development partnership." Samuel considered the offer. It seemed too good to be true, which automatically triggered his caution. "I'd need to have my lawyer review this." "I would expect nothing less," Alexandra agreed readily. "In fact, I'd insist on it. This isn't a decision to make without proper counsel." Samuel was quiet for a long moment, weighing options that all seemed to carry significant risk. "Let me discuss this with Lily today. If we decide to move forward with the bridge loan, we'll have our attorney review it Monday." "That's fair," Alexandra said, closing her portfolio. "Just be aware that these asset sales do move quickly. The sooner you can make a decision about the loan, the better your position will be." As they stood to conclude their impromptu meeting, Samuel found himself asking a question that had been lingering in his mind. "Why us, Alexandra? There must be dozens of struggling farms in this region. What made you focus on Whispering Pines?" Alexandra considered the question carefully before answering. "Initially, it was purely business. Your property has exceptional natural features that align with our development approach. But after meeting you," she paused, seeming to choose her words with care, "I recognized something familiar. My grandparents lost their orchard when I was 12. They had no options, no partners, no one willing to find creative solutions. Just a bank that foreclosed, and a developer who bulldozed every tree to build a strip mall." Her expression held a hint of old pain. "That experience shaped my approach to development. I believe there are ways to create change that honor what came before. Your farm deserves that chance." Samuel was surprised by the personal revelation. "I'm sorry about your grandparents' orchard." "It was a long time ago," Alexandra replied with a small smile, "but some lessons stay with us." As she drove away, Samuel remained at the picnic table, turning over both the immediate threat and the potential solution in his mind. The thought of some faceless investment company accelerating their foreclosure churned his stomach. Yet accepting Alexandra's bridge loan would be a significant step toward the partnership she proposed. He pulled out his phone to call Lily. Whatever they decided, time was rapidly becoming their scarcest resource. Monday morning found Samuel and Lily in the office of James Whitaker, the attorney who had handled Harrison family legal matters for 20 years. The small conference room in Cedar Ridge felt overly formal with its dark wood paneling and leather chairs, a stark contrast to the pragmatic simplicity of farm life. James adjusted his reading glasses as he finished reviewing Alexandra's bridge loan documents. "Well," he said finally, looking up at Samuel and Lily, "I have to say, this is one of the more borrower-friendly agreements I've seen in recent years." "No hidden traps?" Samuel asked, unable to fully shed his wariness. "None that I can identify," James confirmed. "The terms are exactly as you described: favorable interest rate, flexible repayment options, and most importantly, no obligation to proceed with any development partnership." Lily leaned forward. "What about collateral?" "The farm is already leveraged to Cedar Ridge Capital. The loan would satisfy that existing mortgage, with Reeves Realty taking a first position lien instead," James explained. "But critically, the default provisions are much more lenient than your current loan. You'd have significantly more protection against foreclosure." Samuel nodded slowly. "And your opinion on the larger partnership concept?" James removed his glasses, carefully cleaning them with a handkerchief, a habit that Samuel knew indicated thoughtful consideration. I'd need to see the full partnership agreement to give a complete assessment. But based on the preliminary materials Ms. Reeves provided, it appears to be a genuine offer to create mutual benefit rather than simply acquire your property at a discount. That's consistent with what we found in our research, Lily added. The Vermont project specifically has been well documented in agricultural journals. The Alderson farm is actually more profitable now than before the development. James nodded. I took the liberty of making some inquiries with colleagues who've dealt with Reeves Realty Group. Their reputation is solid, known for honoring commitments and taking a longer-term view than most developers. So you think we should accept the bridge loan? Samuel asked directly. That's ultimately your decision. James replied diplomatically. But from a legal perspective, it provides immediate relief from your most pressing concern, while creating space for more deliberate decision-making about the larger opportunity. Samuel exchanged glances with Lily, reading similar thoughts in her expression. After their conversation on Friday, they had spent the weekend researching Cedar Ridge Capital's loan sale and confirmed Alexandra's information. The threat of accelerated foreclosure was real and imminent. What about Nathan? Lily asked quietly. He still wants to be part of this decision. The bridge loan doesn't commit us to the development, Samuel reminded her. It just buys us time to make that choice as a family, without the bank breathing down our necks. James interjected gently. If I may offer an observation, accepting this financing actually preserves Nathan's ability to participate in the larger decision. If your loan is called due before his return, you might have no choice but to accept whatever options remain available, however limited they might be. Lily nodded slowly. That makes sense. She turned to her father. I think we should do it, Dad. Secure the loan now, then wait for Nathan to discuss the partnership. Samuel felt relief wash through him. Having Lily's support made the decision feel less like capitulation and more like a strategic choice. I agree. Let's proceed with the bridge loan. James smiled slightly. I thought you might come to that conclusion. I've prepared the necessary paperwork, should you decide to move forward. He retrieved a folder from his briefcase. You'll need to sign here and here, then I can handle the filing in coordination with Ms. Reeves' attorneys. As they completed the paperwork, Samuel felt a weight lifting from his shoulders, not entirely, but significantly. For months, every decision had been made under the oppressive shadow of imminent financial disaster. Now, at least temporarily, they had breathing room to consider their future more deliberately. After leaving the attorney's office, Samuel called Alexandra to inform her of their decision. Her response was professional, but warmly appreciative of their trust. She assured him that her team would expedite the loan processing to ensure it was completed CAS. Before Cedar Ridge Capital could finalize their loan sale, the drive back to Whispering Pines was quieter than the journey into town had been. Both Samuel and Lily seemed lost in private thoughts about what this first concrete step might mean for their future. You know, Lily finally said as they turned onto the gravel road leading to the farm, I've been thinking about those sustainable agriculture models Alexandra mentioned, the ones her experts said would work well on our western acreage. Samuel glanced at her, noting the spark of enthusiasm in her expression. The specialty crops? Not just that, Lily continued. The integrated approach crops, education, direct marketing. It's actually similar to what I wrote my senior thesis about, but I never thought we have the capital to implement anything like it. Samuel felt a smile tugging at his lips. Despite her initial resistance, Lily's innovative mind was already engaging with the possibilities. Your mother always said you had the vision to bring this place into the future. She'd be proud to see you thinking this way. Lily's eyes glistened briefly. I just wish Nathan could see the potential too. He's so focused on preserving the past that he might miss the chance to secure the future. Given time, Samuel advised. Nathan loves this land as much as any of us. Once he understands the full situation, he might surprise you. As they crested the final hill, Whispering Pines Farm came into view, its fields stretching toward the horizon under the afternoon sun. For the first time in years, Samuel looked at his land and saw not just mounting problems, but emerging possibilities. Whenever came next would bring profound change. But perhaps change was exactly what triggered. The Harrison legacy needed to endure. The 3 weeks until Nathan's return passed with surprising speed. The bridge loan from Reeves Realty Group was processed efficiently, paying off Cedar Ridge Capital just days before the loan sale was finalized. Samuel received confirmation that the farm's mortgage was now held by RRG Holdings, with significantly more favorable terms than their previous financing. With the immediate financial threat neutralized, Samuel and Lily had space to consider Alexandra's partnership proposal more thoroughly. They requested and received detailed financial projections, development timelines, and comprehensive plans for the agricultural components. Alexandra's team was responsive and transparent, providing information without applying pressure for decisions. Lily had thrown herself into researching sustainable farming models, consulting with agricultural extension experts, and connecting with operators of similar ventures. Her initial skepticism had evolved into cautious optimism as she envisioned implementing techniques she had studied but never expected to apply at Whispering Pines. Samuel focused on practical preparations for Nathan's homecoming. His son had completed his final military processing and was officially a civilian again after 8 years of service. Their phone conversations had remained somewhat strained when discussing the farm's future, with Nathan maintaining his resistance to any development partnership, despite Samuel's explanations of the financial realities. The morning of Nathan's arrival dawned clear and mild. Samuel rose early as always, completing essential chores before driving to the regional airport 2 hours away. As he waited in the arrivals area, he felt the complex mixture of emotions that had characterized his relationship with his son in recent years: pride in the man Nathan had become, regret for the distance that had grown between them, hope that they might find common ground despite their different visions. When Nathan emerged through the security doors, Samuel was struck by how much older his son looked than the last time they'd been together. Military service had hardened the boyish features into a man's face, added breadth to his shoulders, and instilled a confident bearing that was immediately apparent. Nathan spotted his father and moved toward him with purpose, dropping his duffel bag to accept Samuel's embrace. "Welcome home, son," Samuel said, his voice thick with emotion. "Good to be home, Dad," Nathan replied, the formality in his tone unable to fully mask his own feelings. The drive back to Whispering Pines was filled with safer topics: Nathan's final weeks of service, friends from his unit, plans for reconnecting with local acquaintances. They skirted around discussion of the farm until they turned onto the county road that would take them the final stretch home. "So," Nathan said, his voice carefully neutral, "how are things with the developer?" Samuel kept his eyes on the road. "Her name is Alexandra Reeves, and things are progressing. We accepted the bridge loan to avoid foreclosure, as I mentioned on the phone. That buys us time to consider the partnership without immediate pressure." Nathan nodded stiffly. "And Lily's on board with this plan now?" "She's researching it thoroughly," Samuel replied, "looking at the agricultural components especially. She's identified some interesting possibilities if we proceed." "If," Nathan emphasized. "Yes, if," Samuel agreed. "No final decisions have been made. We've been waiting for you to be part of that conversation." Nathan turned to look out the window as familiar landscapes rolled by. "I appreciate that. I know I haven't been here dealing with the day-to-day struggles." "You've been serving your country," Samuel said firmly. "That's nothing to apologize for." They lapsed into silence until the farm came into view. Nathan straightened in his seat, his eyes scanning the fields and buildings hungrily. Despite his years away, Samuel could see that his son's connection to the land remained powerful. "Looks the same," Nathan murmured, almost to himself. "On the surface," Samuel acknowledged. "But she's struggling, Nathan. The land, the equipment, all of it needs more than we've been able to give." Nathan didn't respond directly. "Is Lily at the house?" "She should be. She was making your favorite chili this morning, before I left." A ghost of a smile crossed Nathan's face. "Mom's recipe? As close as anyone can get to it," Samuel confirmed, turning onto the gravel drive that led to the farmhouse. Lily was waiting on the porch, bouncing slightly with poorly contained excitement. Despite their occasional differences, the siblings had always been close. As soon as the truck stopped, Lily ran to meet them, practically pulling Nathan from the passenger seat into a fierce hug. "Look at you, all grown up and important," she teased, though her eyes were suspiciously bright. "Look who's talking, Miss Agricultural Science," Nathan returned, ruffling her hair like he had when they were children. Samuel watched their reunion with a bittersweet smile. For a moment, time seemed to fold back on itself, and he could almost imagine Sarah standing beside him. Her hand slipped into his as they watched their children together. The illusion shattered when Nathan turned toward the house and asked, "When is the developer Alexandra coming to make her pitch?" Lily shot a quick glance at Samuel before answering, "Tomorrow afternoon. We thought you'd want a day to settle in first." "Fine." Nathan nodded. "That gives us time to talk, just the three of us." The rest of the day passed in a careful dance around the central issue. They shared a home-cooked meal, showed Nathan the minor changes around the farm, and caught up on family matters. But beneath the normal conversation ran an undercurrent of anticipation. Tomorrow would bring decisions that would reshape all their futures. After dinner, when Lily had gone upstairs to shower, Samuel and Nathan sat on the porch with glasses of the whiskey they reserved for special occasions. "I visited Mom's willow tree this afternoon," Nathan said after a period of comfortable silence. Samuel nodded. The massive weeping willow where he had proposed to Sarah decades earlier, and where they had scattered her ashes after cancer took her, was a sacred place for their family. "I still talk to her there sometimes." "Me too," Nathan admitted. "I asked her what she would think about all this." Samuel turned to study his son's profile, so like Sarah's in the fading light. "And what answer did you receive?" Nathan smiled slightly. "Nothing clear, just the wind in the branches." He sipped his whiskey. "But I did remember something she used to say when I was frustrated as a kid. Sometimes the way forward isn't what we expected, but that doesn't mean it's wrong." "Sounds like Sarah," Samuel agreed. "She was always better at embracing change than I was." "The thing is, Dad," Nathan continued, his voice dropping, "this land has been Harrison land for 3 generations. The thought of strangers building houses on it, changing it forever, it feels like failure." Samuel considered his response carefully. "I felt the same way at first, but have come to wonder if success might look different than what we've always imagined." He gestured toward the darkened fields. "Your great-grandfather didn't buy this land to create a museum frozen in time. He bought it to build a future for his family. Maybe honoring his legacy isn't about doing exactly what he did, but about ensuring the land continues to support Harrisons for generations to come." End quote. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. "I need to understand exactly what this partnership would mean, not just the financial aspects, but what happens to the land, to our home, to everything we've built here." "That's exactly what tomorrow's meeting is for," Samuel assured him. "Come with an open mind, ask hard questions, and then we'll decide together." "Together," Nathan agreed, raising his glass in a small toast. "To the Harrison legacy, whatever form it takes." Samuel clinked his glass against his son's. "To the legacy." As they sat in companionable silence watching stars appear in the evening sky, Samuel felt cautiously hopeful. Nathan's willingness to consider possibilities was a significant step. Tomorrow would reveal whether Alexandra's vision could align with the Harrison family's needs, not just for survival, but for a future worth building. Alexandra arrived precisely at the scheduled time the following afternoon. Samuel noticed she had once again adapted her appearance to the setting, professional, but approachable in slacks and a simple blouse, with minimal jewelry and practical shoes. She carried her now familiar portfolio and a small tablet. Introductions were made on the front porch, Nathan standing slightly apart, his posture reflecting military bearing and careful assessment as he shook Alexandra's hand. "Thank you for making time to meet so soon after your return," Alexandra said to him. "Your father speaks very highly of you." "I'm glad to be included in these discussions," Nathan replied formally. "This farm is my inheritance too, even if I chose a different path for now." Alexandra nodded, acknowledging the subtle claim of ownership in his statement. "Family legacies matter. That's actually central to what I hope to discuss today." They moved to the dining room table, which Lily had cleared of its usual clutter, to make space for Alexandra's materials. Samuel noticed the careful way Alexandra arranged her documents, ensuring everyone could see clearly from their positions around the table. "Before we begin," Alexandra said, "I want to thank you for considering this partnership. Not every family would be open to such a significant change, especially with such deep roots in this land." "We haven't decided anything yet," Nathan pointed out immediately. "Of course," Alexandra agreed without defensiveness. "That's exactly why we're here, to ensure you have complete information before making any decisions." She opened her portfolio. "I've shared most of these materials with your father and sister already, but I'll review everything from the beginning for your benefit, Nathan. Please stop me with any questions." For the next hour, Alexandra methodically outlined her proposal, explaining the partnership structure, financial projections, development plans, and agricultural components. She used clear language, avoiding industry jargon, and repeatedly emphasized the Harrison family's continuing role as both landowners and partners in the venture. Nathan listened intently, occasionally asking precise questions that revealed both his intelligence and his skepticism. Alexandra answered each query directly, neither overselling benefits nor minimizing challenges. "So, essentially," Nathan summarized after Alexandra had covered the core proposal, "we would sell 60% of our land to this new partnership entity, retain the remaining 40% outright, and own 25% of the development company." "Correct," Alexandra confirmed. "The partnership would develop the eastern and southern portions with an eco-conscious community of approximately 75 homes on generous lots, preserving natural features and establishing permanent conservation easements on about 30% of the developed acreage." End quote. "And our financial benefit comes from both the initial land value and ongoing profits from home sales and community fees," Nathan continued. "Yes, the initial capital would eliminate all farm debt and provide approximately $1.2 million for agricultural improvements to the CA. Remaining Harrison acreage, ongoing revenue from your ownership stake, would create cash flow to support operations and innovation." End quote. Nathan frowned slightly. "These projections assume all homes sell within 36 months at these price points. That seems optimistic." Alexandra nodded. "It's a valid concern. If you look in Appendix C, we've included sensitivity analyses showing timelines extended to 48 and 60 months, with price variations of plus or minus 15%. Even in the most conservative scenario, the partnership remains profitable for all parties." End quote. Samuel was impressed with both Alexandra's thorough preparation and Nathan's incisive questions. His son had clearly done research of his own since arriving home. "What happens to the Harrison name in all this?" Nathan asked suddenly. "Does this become Reeves Development or something similar?" Alexandra smiled slightly. "Actually, we propose naming it Harrison Hills to honor your family's legacy. The marketing materials would prominently feature the history of Whispering Pines Farm and the Harrison family's stewardship of the land for generations. Making us part of the sales pitch," Nathan observed. "Making your authentic connection to this land part of what gives the community meaning," Alexandra countered. "Modern homebuyers are increasingly seeking places with genuine history and character. Your family's continuing presence, operating the adjacent agricultural areas, adds tremendous value to the development." Lily, who had been mostly quiet during the presentation, spoke up. "I've been researching the agricultural components of your proposal, Ms. Reeves. The transition to specialty organic crops and direct marketing would require significant expertise. How would that be addressed?" "Excellent question," Alexandra replied, turning to a new section in her materials. "Reeves Realty Group would fund consulting partnerships with agricultural specialists during the transition. Additionally, we've identified potential for an educational component working with regional universities to establish internship programs focused on sustainable farming practices." Lily's eyes brightened with interest. "That aligns perfectly with some models I've been studying." "I thought it might," Alexandra acknowledged. "Your father mentioned your academic background. We would welcome your leadership in shaping those educational partnerships." Nathan watched this exchange with a pensive expression. "This all sounds very tailored to appeal to each of us," he observed. Dad gets financial stability, Lily gets her sustainable agriculture laboratory, I get preservation of the family name. Conveniently perfect. Alexandra met his gaze directly. It's not manipulation, Nathan. It's good business to identify mutual benefits. For this partnership to succeed long-term, every participant needs to find genuine value. My company profits from creating a unique development with authentic connections to place and history. Your family secures financial stability while maintaining your agricultural legacy in a more sustainable form. These aren't contradictory goals. Nathan held her gaze for a long moment before looking away first. And what happens to the farmhouse? Our home? It remains yours completely, Alexandra answered promptly. The development borders would be established to provide privacy and buffer zones around all existing Harrison structures. The discussion continued for another hour, delving into increasingly specific details about water rights, road access, homeowner association structures, agricultural marketing plans, and dozens of other considerations. Throughout, Alexandra maintained her composed, straightforward approach, neither overselling the benefits nor dismissing legitimate concerns. Finally, Samuel sensed that a natural conclusion had been reached. I think we have a lot to discuss as a family, he said. Alexandra, you've given us comprehensive information. Thank you for that. Alexandra began gathering her materials. Of course. Family decisions require family discussion. She handed each of them a bound copy of her presentation materials. Please take whatever time you need to consider this opportunity. I'm available to answer any additional questions that arise. As they walked her to her car, Alexandra turned to face the three Harrisons. I believe in what we could create here together. But I also respect that this is ultimately your heritage and your choice. Whatever you decide, I hope our interactions have been helpful in clarifying possibilities for Whispering Pines' future. After Alexandra's departure, the Harrison family returned to the porch, an unspoken agreement that they needed to begin processing what they had heard. They sat in thoughtful silence for several minutes, each turning over aspects of the proposal in private consideration. Nathan was the first to speak. She's very good at what she does. Samuel nodded. Yes, she is. But that doesn't mean she's not sincere. I've cross-checked everything she's presented so far, Lily added. The numbers are solid, the projections reasonable. The agricultural transition plan is actually quite innovative. Nathan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. But once we do this, there's no going back. The eastern fields would never grow crops again. They'd be neighborhoods. They might not grow crops again anyway if we lose the whole farm to foreclosure, Samuel pointed out gently. The bridge loan buys us time to explore other options, Nathan countered. Which we've been doing for 2 years, Lily reminded him. Dad and I have pursued every grant, program, and alternative financing option available. This is the first viable path forward we've found. Nathan stood and walked to the porch railing, looking out over the fields that were turning golden in the late afternoon light. I need some time, he said finally. Can we hold off on any decisions for a few days? I'd like to walk the property, reconnect with the land before we determine its fate. Samuel exchanged glances with Lily, who gave a small nod. That seems reasonable, he agreed. Alexandra isn't pressuring us for an immediate answer. Thank you, Nathan said quietly. I'm going to head out for a walk now, actually. Clear my head a bit. As Nathan descended the porch steps and set off toward the western fields, Lily moved to sit beside her father. What do you think he'll decide? Samuel watched his son's receding figure. I'm not sure, but he deserves the space to come to his own conclusions. He patted Lily's hand. Nathan always connects with this place most deeply when he walks it alone. Let's give him that chance. Nathan's solitary figure grew smaller as he crossed the open field toward the tree line in the distance. His military posture gradually relaxed as he moved deeper into the familiar landscape of his childhood. This land had shaped him, even as he had chosen to leave it. Now it was asking him to help shape its future. The next morning arrived with a gentle rain, the kind farmers called a $1,000,000 shower, for its perfect timing to nourish growing crops. Samuel found Nathan already at the kitchen table when he came down at dawn, a notepad covered with calculations and notes spread before him. "Been up long?" Samuel asked, moving to start the coffee. "A couple hours," Nathan admitted. "Couldn't sleep much. Been running numbers, thinking about what Mom would say." Samuel nodded, giving his son space to continue if he wished. The coffee maker gurgled comfortingly in the background as rain pattered against the windows. "I went to the willow tree again yesterday," Nathan finally said. "Sat there for a long time, remembering how Mom used to talk about change. She was always telling us that adaptation wasn't the same as surrender." "That sounds like Sarah," Samuel agreed, with a small smile. "She embraced change better than any of us." "I fought against the idea of this development because it felt like giving up," Nathan continued. "But I realized something yesterday. Maybe fighting to preserve exactly what was, even when it's no longer viable, is its own kind of surrender. Surrendering to the past instead of building a future." Samuel poured 2 cups of coffee, setting one before his son before taking a seat across from him. "That's a profound insight." "Don't give me too much credit," Nathan said with a rueful smile. "I'm still struggling with it. But I remembered what Great-Grandpa Warren used to say about the land remembering who loves it." "That the land remembers who loves it," Samuel echoed the family saying. "Yes. He didn't mean loving it by preserving it in amber," Nathan continued. "He meant loving it by respecting what it could become, working with its nature rather than trying to force it to be something it's not." He tapped his notepad. "I've been thinking about that eastern acreage. It does have the best views, the most interesting topography. In a way, building homes there that let people connect with those natural features might be more aligned with the land's potential than continuing to force it to grow commodity crops." Samuel felt a swell of pride in his son's thoughtfulness. "That's a generous way to look at it." "I'm trying," Nathan admitted. "And I've been looking at Alexandra's agricultural transition plan too. The models for the western fields actually make a lot of sense. Higher value crops on fewer acres, more sustainable practices, direct marketing to the community. It's closer to how Great-Grandpa farmed before agricultural industrialization changed everything." Lily appeared in the doorway, clearly having overheard the last part of their conversation. "That's what I've been thinking too," she said, entering the kitchen and pouring herself coffee. "It's almost like going back to our roots while moving forward at the same time." Nathan looked up at his sister. "I'm not fully convinced yet," he warned, "but I'm open to the possibility that this partnership might be the best way to preserve what matters most about Harrison land." Louis's face brightened with cautious hope. "That's all we're asking, that you consider it with an open mind. The final decision should be unanimous. We're all Harrisons." Samuel watched his children with quiet gratitude. Despite their different paths, they shared a fundamental connection to this place and to each other. Whatever decision they reached would be stronger for having all their perspectives, considered. "What questions do you still have?" Lily asked, sitting down at the table. Nathan referred to his notes. "I'm concerned about controls on the development itself. How do we ensure it truly respects the landscape? How do we prevent it from expanding further in the future? What guarantees do we have about the quality and character of what's built?" "Those are exactly the kind of details we'd address in the full partnership agreement," Samuel said. "Alexandra has been very transparent about being willing to incorporate specific protections and restrictions." The 3 Harrisons spent the rainy morning discussing particulars, reviewing Alexandra's materials, and addressing Nathan's concerns one by one. By lunchtime, a tentative consensus was emerging. While details remained to be negotiated, the fundamental concept of the partnership was one they could potentially all support. "So," Samuel said as they cleared away lunch dishes, "shall I contact Alexandra to arrange another meeting? Move this to the next stage?" Nathan and Lily exchanged glances before both nodding. "Yes," Nathan said, "but I have specific points I want included in any agreement. Non-negotiable elements about land protection, architectural standards, and our ongoing role." "I have a few of those myself," Lily added, "particularly regarding the agricultural transition support and educational partnerships." Samuel smiled. "I think Alexandra will appreciate your thoroughness. She strikes me as someone who respects partners who know what they want." Later that afternoon, with the rain having given way to watery sunshine. Samuel called Alexandra to schedule a follow-up meeting. Her evident pleasure at hearing the Harrisons wanted to proceed to the next stage was tempered with professional restraint. Another point in her favor from Samuel's perspective. They arranged for her to return in 2 days' time for more detailed discussions. As Samuel ended the call, he found himself reflecting on the strange path that had led them here. A chance encounter with a lost traveler had somehow opened a door to possibilities he couldn't have imagined. Weeks earlier, life had a way of presenting opportunities in the most unexpected packages. Alexandra arrived for the follow-up meeting with an expanded team, her company's legal counsel, a landscape architect, and an agricultural consultant. The Harrisons had prepared as well, creating a detailed list of requirements and questions with James Whitaker's assistance. What might have been an adversarial negotiation instead developed into a collaborative working session. Alexandra set the tone immediately by emphasizing that successful partnerships required all parties to achieve their core objectives. The Harrison family's continuing connection to this land is one of its most valuable assets, she told her team. Our goal isn't to erase that history, but to help it evolve sustainably. Over the next several hours, they crafted the framework for an agreement that addressed each family member's priorities. Nathan's concerns about development quality and environmental protection were met with, quote, specific architectural standards and conservation easements. Lily's vision for agricultural innovation was supported by consulting resources and educational partnerships. Samuel Stasher. Focus on financial security and preserving the family legacy was reinforced with favorable terms and explicit recognition of Harrison history throughout the community. By evening, they had a comprehensive term sheet that would guide the creation of formal partnership documents. As Alexandra's team gathered their materials to depart, Nathan approached her directly. I have one additional request, he said. I'd like to be involved in the development process itself. Not just as a Harrison family representative, but professionally. I studied civil engineering before joining the Marines, and I've been considering career options now that I'm a civilian again. Alexandra regarded him with interest. What role are you envisioning? Project management eventually, Nathan replied. I'd start wherever makes sense to learn the business. But I want to be directly involved in creating something that honors this land properly. A smile spread across Alexandra's face. That would be tremendously valuable, Nathan. Having someone with your connection to the property involved in its development would ensure authenticity in ways an outside team simply couldn't achieve. I'd be working for the partnership, not just the Harrison side, Nathan clarified. I want to understand the full business, contribute meaningfully. Even better, Alexandra agreed. We can discuss specifics separately, but I'm excited by the possibility. Truly. As the visitors departed, a sense of cautious optimism settled over Whispering Pines Farm. The path ahead would require significant change, but it was a change the Harrisons were now helping to direct, rather than merely enduring. Later that evening, the family gathered on the porch, as had become their habit for important conversations. The sunset painted the western fields in hues of gold and amber, while evening shadows lengthened across the eastern acreage that would eventually hold new homes. Did you ever imagine this is where we'd end up when that fancy car pulled up asking for directions? Lily asked with a hint of wonder in her voice. Samuel shook his head. Not in a million years. But your mother always said the best opportunities often arrive disguised as problems or coincidences. I think she'd approve, Nathan said quietly. Not because it's perfect or easy, but because we're facing reality together while fighting to preserve what matters most. Samuel nodded, feeling Sarah's presence among them more strongly than he had in years. She would remind us that the land remembers who loves it. And love sometimes means letting go of what was to embrace what could be. As darkness settled over Whispering Pines, the Harrisons continued their conversation, planning not just for the next season but for generations to come. The farm that had sustained their family for 3 generations would change significantly. Yet in that change lay the seeds of a new beginning, one that might allow the Harrison legacy to flourish in ways they were only beginning to imagine. 6 months later, Samuel stood at the edge of the eastern field, watching as surveying equipment was set up along boundaries that had been carefully mapped to preserve natural features of the land. The survey marked the first tangible step in transforming this portion of Whispering Call Pines from farmland to the future Harrison Hills community. The months since signing the partnership agreement had been intense but productive. Alexandra had proven to be exactly the partner she had promised. Collaborative, transparent, and genuinely committed to creating something that honored the land's heritage while securing its future. Nathan had joined the development team as an assistant project manager, his military experience and engineering background proving valuable as they navigated the complex permitting and planning processes. His presence ensured Harrison family priorities remained central to every decision, from preserving legacy trees to designing road layouts that followed natural contours of the land. Lily had thrown herself into the agricultural transition with characteristic passion. Under her guidance, the western fields were being prepared for their first season of specialty organic crops. Cover crops now grew where commodity corn had once stood, rebuilding soil that had been depleted by decades of conventional farming. She had also begun developing educational programs in partnership with the state university, designing curriculum that would bring agricultural students to Whispering Pines for hands-on learning and sustainable farming techniques. For Samuel, these months had brought a mixture of emotions: nostalgia for the farm as it had been, excitement for what it was becoming, and profound relief that the Harrison legacy would continue, albeit in an altered form. The financial stability provided by the partnership allowed him to sleep peacefully for the first time in years, knowing that the land would remain in the family and continue to support them, just as his grandfather had intended. "Quite a view from here, isn't it?" Alexandra's voice interrupted his thoughts as she approached across the field. "I can see why you fought so hard to preserve this land." Samuel nodded. "It's got good bones, as my grandfather would say. Land with character." Alexandra smiled, stopping beside him to survey the rolling terrain. "The architects are finalizing the first phase designs. They're quite remarkable. Each home will be oriented to capture unique views while minimizing visual impact on the landscape." "Nathan showed me the renderings," Samuel confirmed. "They're thoughtfully done, respectful of the land." "Your son has become an invaluable part of the team," Alexandra said. "He challenges us to think more deeply about every decision, which ultimately leads to better outcomes." "He's found his place," Samuel agreed. "In a way I never expected, but perhaps should have." Nathan always connected with this land most deeply when he was helping shape it. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the survey team work methodically across the field. "I've been meaning to ask you something," Samuel said finally. "That first day, when you stopped for directions, was it really a coincidence? Or had you already identified Whispering Pines as a potential site?" Alexandra laughed softly. "Both, actually. I had identified Cedar Ridge as a region with development potential and was exploring the surrounding countryside. My GPS truly did fail on these back roads. But once I saw your property, I recognized its exceptional qualities immediately. So, fate and strategy together," Samuel mused. "Life often works that way," Alexandra replied. "The best opportunities emerge at the intersection of chance and preparation." A truck approached along the farm road, dust billowing behind it. As it drew closer, Samuel recognized it as Lily's, returning from a meeting with organic certification specialists in town. "I should get back to the team," Alexandra said. "We have permit submissions to finalize this afternoon." "Of course," Samuel nodded. "Thank you for checking in." As Alexandra walked back toward the temporary field office that had been established near the equipment barn, Lily parked her truck and jogged over to her father, excitement evident in her expression. "Dad, the certification process is going even better than expected," she announced breathlessly. "Our soil samples show minimal chemical residue in the western sections, which means we might achieve organic status sooner than projected." "That's wonderful news," Samuel said, smiling at his daughter's enthusiasm. "And the university partnership is official," Lily continued. "We'll have our first group of student interns next spring. They're already calling it the Harrison Sustainable Agriculture Program." Pride swelled in Samuel's chest. "Your mother would be so proud of what you're creating, Lily." What we're all creating, she corrected gently. This is a family legacy, remember? Speaking of which, Nathan called while I was in town. He's bringing the final home site layout plans home for dinner tonight. Wants us all to review them together. Samuel nodded, looking out over the land that had been the center of his life for over 5 decades. It was changing. Yes, transforming in ways his father and grandfather might have found difficult to imagine. But beneath those changes ran the constant thread of Harrison's stewardship, now extending into new generations and new forms. "Dad?" Lily asked, noticing his pensive expression. "Are you okay with all this? Sometimes I wonder if we made the right choice." Samuel put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "Change is never easy, sweetheart. But yes, I believe we made the right choice, not just for ourselves, but for the land. Your great-grandfather used to say that good farmers listen to what the land wants to become." "And what does it want to become now?" Lily asked softly. Samuel gestured toward the surveying team, then back toward the western fields where cover crops grew in neat rows. "Something new, but something true to its nature. A place where people connect with the land differently but meaningfully. Where Harrison hands still shape the soil, just not in the ways we once expected." Lily leaned against her father's shoulder. "I think that's beautiful." "It is," Samuel agreed. "And somewhat miraculous, considering how close we came to losing everything." As they walked back toward the farmhouse together, Samuel reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. A lost traveler asking for directions had somehow redirected their entire future. Alexandra Reeves had entered their lives at precisely the moment when traditional paths forward had been exhausted, offering instead a new vision that honored the past while embracing necessary change. The sun was beginning to set as they reached the house, casting long shadows across the land that had been Harrison territory for 3 generations and would now remain so for many more to come. The legacy would continue, not despite change but because of it, because they had found the courage to reimagine what it meant to love this land and keep it in the family's care. And in that reimagining, Whispering Pines Farm had found not an ending, but a new beginning. The eastern fields would soon hold homes where families would create their own connections to this special place. The western acreage would continue to produce bounty, though in new forms and through innovative methods. And at the center of it all, the Harrisons would remain adapting, evolving, but always rooted in the soil that had shaped their identity for generations. As Samuel stepped onto the porch, he paused to look back once more at the property stretching before him. In the gathering dusk, with survey flags marking new boundaries and the distant figure of his son walking the perimeter with development team members, he could almost hear Sarah's voice carried on the evening breeze. "The land remembers who loves it." And love, Samuel had come to understand, sometimes meant having the courage to let go of what had been in order to embrace what could be. In that letting go, they had paradoxically held on to what mattered most, the Harrison connection to this land and to each other. Stretching toward a future none of them could have imagined, when a black Mercedes had appeared on their dusty road just months before. "Coming, Dad?" Lily called from the doorway. "Yes," Samuel replied, turning toward the warm light spilling from the farmhouse that had sheltered Harrisons for nearly a century and would continue to do so. "I'm coming." As he stepped inside to join his family, Samuel carried with him the quiet certainty that they had found their way forward not by clinging desperately to the past, but by honoring it through thoughtful transformation. Whispering Pines would endure, not as a museum piece preserved in amber, but as a living, evolving testament to the Harrison legacy of stewardship, adaptation, and love for the land that had sustained them through generations. In the end, perhaps that was the greatest legacy of all. Not what remained unchanged, but what found new purpose through change, embraced with wisdom, courage, and an abiding connection to place. The struggling farmer and the lost traveler had together written a new chapter in the ongoing story of Whispering Pines Farm, ensuring that its narrative would continue long after they themselves had become part of its rich history. 1 year later, the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the first completed home in Harrison Hills took place on a perfect autumn day. Golden sunshine bathed the gathering of community members, development partners, and the Harrison family as Alexandra Reeves addressed the small crowd. When I first drove down that county road and met Samuel Harrison, I couldn't have imagined the journey we would undertake together, she said, gesturing toward Samuel, who stood proudly with Lily and Nathan at his side. What began as a chance encounter has evolved into a true partnership, one that honors the legacy of this remarkable land while creating new opportunities for connection and community. The model home behind her showcased the architectural principles that would define Harrison Hill's natural materials. Clean lines that complemented rather than competed with the landscape, and positioning that maximized views while minimizing environmental impact. Native plantings surrounded the structure, already beginning to blur the line between built environment and natural setting. This development represents a new approach to rural land preservation, Alexandra continued. One that recognizes that the most sustainable path forward often involves thoughtful change rather than rigid preservation or unconstrained development. Samuel listened with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The years since signing the partnership agreement had brought challenges, certainly permit delays, weather complications, the inevitable adjustments as plans confronted reality. But throughout, the foundation of mutual respect and shared purpose between the Harrisons and Reeves Realty Group had held firm. Nathan had thrived in his role with the development team, his natural leadership abilities and intimate knowledge of the property making him invaluable as they navigated the complex process of transforming fields into building sites while preserving the land's essential character. He had recently been promoted to full project manager for the second phase, a responsibility he approached with characteristic thoroughness and integrity. Lily had overseen the agricultural transformation with equal success. The western fields now produced a diverse array of specialty crops that supplied restaurants as far away as Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. First class of agricultural interns had completed their semester at what was now officially named the Harrison Center for Sustainable Agriculture, bringing fresh energy and ideas to farming practices that combine traditional wisdom with cutting-edge techniques. As for Samuel himself, he had found an unexpected pleasure in serving as the development's unofficial historian, documenting the property's journey from Warren Harrison's post-war purchase through its evolution into the present-day partnership. Future residents would receive a beautifully bound history of the land beneath their homes, connecting them to a legacy that stretched back generations. Alexandra concluded her remarks and invited Samuel to join her for the ceremonial ribbon cutting. As they posed for photographs, she leaned close to murmur, "We did it, Samuel. We found a way to honor the past while building something new." "We're still finding our way," Samuel replied with a smile. "But yes, I believe we're on the right path." Later, as the crowd dispersed toward the reception tent set up near the model home, Samuel took a moment to walk alone to the ridge, overlooking both the development area and the thriving agricultural fields beyond. From this vantage point, the harmony between the two distinct but complementary uses of Harrison land was particularly evident. He was not alone for long. Alexandra joined him, respecting his contemplative mood with comfortable silence as they gazed across the property together. "Penny for your thoughts," she finally said. Samuel chuckled. "Probably not worth that much. Just reflecting on how differently things might have turned out if you hadn't taken that wrong turn a year ago." "I've stopped believing it was entirely wrong," Alexandra replied. "Some detours lead exactly where we need to go, even if we don't recognize it at the time. My wife Sarah used to say something similar," Samuel observed. "That life's most important journeys rarely follow the expected route." "Wise woman," Alexandra said. "I wish I could have met her." "She would have liked you," Samuel told her, surprised to realize he truly believed it. Sarah always appreciated people who combined vision with practicality. They stood in companionable silence for another moment before Alexandra spoke again. "The agricultural program Lily has developed has attracted attention from sustainable farming advocates nationwide. Did she tell you the governor's office called about featuring it in a state initiative?" Samuel nodded, pride evident in his expression. "She mentioned it, trying not to get ahead of herself, but I can tell she's excited by the possibility." "She should be. What she's creating here is exactly the kind of model that could help other family farms transition toward viability," Alexandra gestured toward the western fields, where fall crops were being harvested. The Harrison legacy of agricultural innovation continues, just in a form adapted to current realities. And Nathan? Samuel asked. How is he really doing from your perspective? He tells me things are going well, but he's always been one to shoulder burdens quietly. Alexandra smiled. He's exceptional, Samuel. His understanding of both the technical and human aspects of development is rare. The team respects him tremendously. And homebuyers respond to his authentic connection to the property. I've been meaning to discuss expanded responsibilities for him as we look toward our next project in the region. End quote. Next project? Samuel raised an eyebrow. Still preliminary, Alexandra clarified. But the Harrison Hills model is proving so successful that we're exploring similar partnerships with other landowners. Nathan's experience would be invaluable in those conversations. Samuel nodded thoughtfully. He's found his path, not the one I once expected for him, but one that seems to bring him genuine satisfaction. The best paths often surprise us, Alexandra observed. A year ago, neither of us could have predicted standing here like this, looking out over what we've created together. What we're creating, Samuel corrected gently. It's still unfolding, still becoming. Like all worthwhile endeavors, Alexandra agreed. From the reception tent, Nathan waved, indicating they were needed for the next portion of the ceremony. Samuel and Alexandra began walking back, moving at an unhurried pace that allowed them to continue their conversation. Alexandra, Samuel said as they neared the gathering, I never properly thanked you. For what specifically? She asked. For seeing possibilities here that I couldn't see on my own. For offering partnership rather than merely acquisition. For respecting what this land meant to my family. Samuel's voice carried the weight of genuine gratitude. You could have approached this strictly as a business transaction. Many developers would have. Alexandra was quiet for a moment before responding. When my grandparents lost their orchard, something precious was destroyed that could never be recovered. Not just the trees, but the knowledge, the connection to place, the continuity of care that had shaped that land for generations. She paused, then continued with careful honesty. I built my business to be successful, certainly, but also to demonstrate that development doesn't have to erase what came before, that the most valuable communities are those that honor their foundations while building pasha. Something new. Well, Samuel said simply, thank you. As they rejoined the celebration, Samuel found himself surrounded by his children, the development team, new homeowners eager to learn about the property's history, and community members curious about the CBLD. Innovative approach to rural land use. The atmosphere was one of genuine excitement about the future taking shape on Harrison land. Later that evening, after the festivities concluded, the Harrison family gathered on their farmhouse porch, as they had countless times before. The lights of the model home were visible in the distance, a tangible symbol of the changes underway. Quite a day, Nathan commented, leaning against the porch railing. First of many ribbon cuttings to come. The agricultural tours went well too, Lily added. Those restaurant chefs were practically fighting over who would get first claim on next season's heritage tomatoes. Samuel smiled at his children's evident satisfaction. Your mother would be proud of you both, of all of us, for finding a way forward that honors this place while acknowledging the necessity of change. I was thinking about her today, Nathan admitted, wondering what she would make of all this. I think she's been with us through the whole journey, Lily said softly, guiding us towards something that preserves what matters most while letting go of what needed to change. Samuel nodded, feeling Sarah's presence among them just as he had felt it during the ceremony earlier. The eastern willow tree, where they had scattered her ashes, remained untouched, protected by specific covenant in the development agreement. Like so much else about Whispering Pines, her memorial space would continue, cherished and preserved, even as the land around it evolved. To Mom, Nathan said, raising his glass in the twilight. And to Harrison Hills. To new beginnings rooted in old soil, Lily added. Samuel lifted his own glass, looking out over the land that had been his life's work and would now support his family for generations to come, albeit in ways he could never have imagined when he first inherited it. To the land that remembers who loves it, he said simply, and to those who love it enough to help it become what it needs to be. As darkness settled over Whispering Pines Farm, and the first lights of Harrison Hills twinkled in the distance, Samuel Harrison felt a sense of completion circling back to new beginning. The struggling farmer and the lost traveler had found their way to an unexpected destination that somehow felt exactly right. A future that honored the past without being imprisoned by it, that embraced change while preserving what mattered most. It wasn't the legacy Samuel had once envisioned, but perhaps it was the one this land had been moving toward all along, waiting for the right moment, the right partnership, the right understanding of what it might become. And in that becoming, the Harrison story would continue, evolving but unbroken, rooted in the soil of Whispering Pines for generations yet to come.